Great, thanks, Kim. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Kent Branch October Educational Presentation. Thank you for joining us this evening. My name is Cindy Robichaud. I am part of the Kent Branch operating team and your host for this evening. I'm going to turn off my camera now so that we can focus on the slides. Before I do, I just wanted to introduce our speaker, Rachel. I just wanted to say hi. We'll go through a little bit of branch business and then we'll have Rachel come back on. All right. Okay, turning it off. So before we begin tonight's presentation, we wish to acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe Nation and Chatham-Kent, specifically on the territories of the Lenape Nation and the unceded Walpole Island Nation. We do have a couple housekeeping items. Our presentations are recorded and available on our Kent Branch YouTube channel, which is open and free to everyone. So you have an opportunity to go back and rewatch this presentation. Your microphones and cameras have been turned off, but we welcome your questions. If you hover your mouse near the bottom of your screen, you will see the bar with the chat icon. If you click on it, the chat box will open up. Click on the little arrow beside the word everyone and change it to the word questions instead. Here's where you will type your question or your message for us or for the speaker. And Fran Barco is with us tonight and she will be monitoring the chat for us. So let's get started. For anyone joining us for the very first time, let me tell you a little bit about Ontario Ancestors. Ontario Ancestors has been preserving and promoting family history for over 50 years. And there are branches all across Ontario and special interest groups as well. They are the largest genealogical society in Canada. So that speaks volumes. And there's so much that I could tell you, but just check out their website, which is at the link posted on the screen. So we are one of those branches. We are the Kent Branch, and we focus mainly on Kent County research and general family history. We offer mentoring and education and assistance. We host monthly presentations, and we have a fantastic resource library. Our Family History Resource Library is located on the second floor of the Chatham-Kent Public Library in Chatham. It holds over 40 years worth of historical and genealogical resources for Chatham-Kent. We are open to the public again, and for the month of October and November, we will be open Fridays and Saturdays from 1 p.m. till 5 p.m. We always like to connect with people interested in genealogy and local history. You can connect with us at the email on the screen. You can also join us on our Facebook group, which has over 700 people who are interested in genealogy and Chatham-Kent history. And we also have a very comprehensive website with lots of resources for both our branch members and also for the public. And our branch website there is there too. So speaking of our website, we have one area totally dedicated to providing resources and one-of-a-kind material for our branch members to access at home. Think of it almost as a virtual library. This is our members only section. It is jam-packed with resources and new materials are always being added. So this is one of the best perks to being a Kent Branch member. And if you're doing any genealogy or even historical research in Chatham-Kent and you're not a member of our branch, well, my question to you is, why not? Well, you are in luck as our membership campaign kicks off November. There are early bird prizes and the Grow Our Family campaign is running again this year. This is when a current Ontario Ancestor member brings on a new member and both will receive 50% off their memberships. So if you're interested and you'd like to learn more, please send us an email. Last month, we announced a brand new project that we are working on with the the Chatham-Kent Public Library. Researchers know the valuable information that is tucked into the pages of local newspapers just waiting to be discovered. But how do we find the information about our ancestors in the vast newspaper collection held by the Chatham-Kent Public Library? Well, the newspaper index cards collection, of course. Anyone visiting our room or the Chatham-Kent Public Library to do research has certainly used the index cards that you see on the screen. They point to the microfilms containing information about our ancestors. But what if you don't live local, or worse, the library is closed for an extended period of time, which is exactly what happened due to COVID-19. Well, that is where we hope that this new project will benefit all researchers. The index card collection will be digitized and made available online for free for everyone. So this is going to be a huge project, and we're going to need lots of help. We are currently working on step 1, which is scanning each individual card. And as you can see, there's an example of one of the cards here. They're just jam-packed with information. So this fella right here, you can see he was living in Chatham. He died when he was 95. It has his father's name and his mother's maiden name even, and it has his 2 wives there. So this is just one card out of the literal hundreds and thousands of cards there. So step number 2 will be to transcribe this information. And this is also already underway. This is where we need your help. The transcribing actually takes place right on our website. So there's no special access or login needed, and you can transcribe right from the comfort of your home. Actually, you can transcribe in your PJs if you like. So the detailed instructions, along with the how to transcribe tutorial video, are on our website under the Projects tab. Feel free to send us an email if you have any questions at all. So everyone, we need your help. Let's get ready, set, and transcribe. Then one last quick note about our website is a new feature recently added. Visitors can choose to translate our website to French, if that is more convenient. The English and French icons, those tiny little flags there that you see, will switch the website to the desired language. So hey, now we're bilingual, which is great. Our next upcoming presentation will be on November the 12th at 7 p.m. Brian Anderson joins us to share a few skeletons from his Kent County heritage, along with a couple nice surprises that he found along the way. You can find out more information and the links to register for all of our presentations on our website or in our Facebook group, and we sure hope that you will join us. December and January are always so busy that we take a break from hosting presentations, but we already have a great lineup for our 2022 start. And if you have Scottish roots, just a reminder, we mentioned this last month of this event, the Scottish Tapestry event that's coming to Chatham in October. The exhibition will take place at the Chatham Capitol Theatre in the Rotary Lounge starting October 13th and will run till October 29th with a special opening event on October the 12th. So that's just coming up next Tuesday. The Tulip Tree Needle Art Guild has created a tapestry depicting and celebrating the Scottish Baldoon settlement of Kent County in 1804 by Lord Selkirk. The Baldoon panel will be displayed along with 37 other Canadian panels. So if you happen to be in, the area during that next week, stop by. Okay, so now let's get to tonight's presentation, The Woman in the Photo, Discovering My Indigenous Heritage, by Rachel Sear, who is actually joining us tonight from St. Thomas. Rachel is a wife and a mother who works as a medical transcriptionist and watercolor artist by day, and a genealogical and history enthusiast by night. Sounds like the rest of us too. Inspired by her family research, she has a long list of places she is hoping to visit in the near future when possible. So we first connected with Rachel when she sent an email to us about a name that she found in our master index on our website. The reference pointed to a resource which mentioned an ancestor that she had been searching for and what was the basis of a really interesting family story. We found the material and sent it to her, and this turned out to be the piece of the puzzle that she had been searching for. We were very excited to help her and help her with her research, and we invited her to join us tonight to tell us more. So Rachel, I'm going to turn it over to you now and stop sharing my screen.
Thanks, Cindy. Thank you for that warm welcome. So just hang tight for a second here, folks, and I'm just going to share my screen here and get that going. So just bear with me for one sec. Thank you so much to everyone tuning in tonight. So again, my name is Rachel, and I was born and raised in Chatham. Although I did move away when I went to college, Chatham is still home to me. I still have family there, and I still always feel like I'm going home when I visit. So my mother's side of the family has very deep roots in Chatham, Kent. And so we're part of the Arnold, Tiffin, Blackburn, Ingram, and Knight family lines. So those of you familiar with Kent County history may recognize or potentially even belong to some of those family lines as well. So tonight I'll be discussing the woman in the photo, discovering my Indigenous heritage. So I'm just going to recount my research journey into my Anishinaabe roots, some of the challenges I met along the way, how I was able to overcome them, where things stand today, and what this means for me now. So I hope you enjoy it. So here is the portrait that started it all. My whole interest in genealogical research began with this portrait of an Indigenous woman from the mid-1800s, and this photograph was hanging in my grandmother's house. It had been passed down to her through her father's side of the family, and she'd been told that this was an Ojibwe woman who we descended from, but we didn't know exactly what her name was, who her family was, where she was from, or anything concrete like that. There had been some whispers that there may have been a family connection to Manitoulin Island, but we didn't have any paperwork or anything solid proving that. The only real information we had was this family legend, which so many of us have in our family histories, that her husband was a man called Captain Keating, and he'd been having a particularly bad day one day and was drowning in the rapids up north, and she had rescued him. He then went on to marry her, so it was just this very wild and romantic story. And in all honesty, it did sound a bit too fairy tale-like to me. So it was met with some skepticism on my end, I can admit that now. But as I grew up, I became more and more interested in this story and basically just made it my mission to figure this whole thing out. So I wanted to know, was this family legend true at all? I wanted to know who this woman in the photograph was. Was she an Ojibwe woman? I wanted to know who this mysterious Captain Keating husband of hers was. And of course, I wanted to know whether or not I was really one of their descendants. So in 2014, I started a family tree on the Ancestry.ca website, and using the available birth, baptism, death, marriage, and census records on that site, I was able to trace my family line back to my fourth great-grandfather, who, as you can see at the top of the slide there, was a man by the name of John William Keating. So I did have a bit of an aha moment there, just because this could potentially point to the whole Captain Keating connection in the story I had been told. So if this John William Keating was in fact the Captain Keating I had heard of, then that would mean the woman in the photograph was his wife, making her my fourth great grandmother, and she was a woman by the name of Julia Keating. So taking a look at the census records from 1851 and 1861, it showed John and Julia Keating living in and raising their children in Chatham. But it was the 1861 census that you can see pictured there, and that was the most useful to me in terms of new information, just because it recorded Julia Keating's place of birth as Upper Canada and her religion as Roman Catholic. So you can just see that in the highlighted portion there. Because of my longtime fascination with history, I remembered reading about the role that Roman Catholic priests had played during the early days of colonization in Canada. So, their endeavors to convert the native people to Roman Catholicism, Christianity. So that gave me a little bit more information regarding Julia, just something to keep in my back pocket as I continued to search for more information. However, it was at this point, like so many of us genealogy enthusiasts can relate to, this is where I encountered the dreaded brick wall. So I was having a really hard time finding any more information about John and Julia Keating at this point. So in a moment of desperation, I contacted a professional genealogist, and she was someone who specialized in First Nations ancestry and historical research. I gave her the little information that I had about John and Julia Keating, and to my surprise, she messaged me back almost right away saying that she'd actually already researched John Keating before. And that was because he was actually an Indian agent who had worked for the government's Indian Affairs Department. And interestingly, John had been the very first Indian agent stationed on Walpole Island. So as you can imagine, this information was a game changer. And that was because the Indian Affairs records are housed at Archives Canada, and thankfully many of them are accessible online. So I was able to find documents, letters, records pertaining to John William Keating's career as an Indian agent. So a sample of which you can see on the slide there. So going through all of this paperwork, I was able to determine that John Keating's career as an Indian agent not only took him to Walpole Island, but also all along the shores of Lake Huron. So he worked in Bruce Mines, Sault Ste. Marie, on Manitoulin Island, St. Joseph Island, Thessalon, basically the Algoma district and the Manitoulin chain of islands. Some of his letters, including the one you can see on the far right that has some yellow highlighting there, it is hard to make out, but it does make reference to the fact that John Keating's wife was a Native woman. However, it didn't show what her maiden name was or describe anything about where she came from. So I needed to come up with a strategy to sort of narrow things down. I decided to look through the records that were found at the various locations that I knew John Keating had worked as an Indian agent. So the various locations in Northern Ontario were what I started focusing on, as well as Manitoulin Island. So again, it was back to ancestry.ca, and that meant hours and hours of combing through old handwritten records one by one, because I wasn't finding much with the search function. So I had to take time to explore. I did, however, eventually have a breakthrough. It did feel like an eternity, but finally I was able to uncover a baptismal record for one of John and Julia Keating's daughters, and she just so happened to be my third great grandmother. So that was an exciting day. Now this record is from the year 1840. It's written in French, It's from the Roman Catholic Church Holy Cross, which is located at Wikwemikong on Manitoulin Island. The most exciting part, though, for me was the fact that this record finally listed Julia Keating's maiden name, which I discovered was Palado. So that meant that my fourth great grandmother, the woman in the photograph, was Julia Palado. So I felt like I was finally starting to get to know her a little bit. I was given an additional boost of confidence that my research was accurate because the date and location of this baptism coincided with letters I had already found that were written by John Keating that showed that he was stationed at Wikwemikong on this very day that this baptism took place. So things were starting to come together. As the months went by, I was able to collect additional baptismal records for the other Keating children, and they were found in places such as Sault Ste. Marie, St. Joseph Island, and Walpole Island. So again, locations that I had already discovered were part of John Keating's career as an Indian agent. So again, just pointing to things being accurate and giving me confidence that I was on the right track. So now that I knew that Julia's maiden name was Palado, I really focused in on this surname. One day, just after a perfunctory Google search, I came across a website that was created by a local historian from Northern Ontario. Now, she had posted some information about an Ojibwe family that she had been researching, and they just so happened to have the same last name of Palado. Looking a little bit further into her research, I noticed that the locations and the dates seemed to very closely coincide with information I discovered about my family. So I reached out to her, and she was awesome. She generously sent me copies of all the records she'd collected about this particular family. So at this point, my mission was to see if there was a connection between this Palado family that she'd been researching and my fourth great grandmother, Julia Palado. So using the records I got from this historian and also using records that I was able to find online from ancestry.ca, I slowly built out a family tree for this Ojibwe family, of course hoping to eventually find a connection to my own family line. And I spent months and months on this, but no matter how hard I tried, I just couldn't find any documentation that proved a connection. So this was the point I decided to turn to DNA. So I had my mom, my great uncle, and myself. We all took the Ancestry DNA test, and each of us did have results showing a little bit of Indigenous North American DNA. So while that's encouraging, DNA tests are not able to give us anything specific about the tribes that our Indigenous ancestors belong to. So it's really the DNA cousin matches that I was interested in. So I remember spending hours just sorting through all of these cousin matches, and eventually I did start to notice something interesting. So several of our DNA cousins, those who did also have Indigenous North American DNA, some of them had very well documented family trees that were very well researched. And there were a few of them that I noticed showed that these DNA cousins were direct descendants of a man by the name of Dominique Palado. And looking into his history, I discovered that he was a man who was born and lived in the same time period and location as my fourth great grandmother, Julia. So it was at this point in time I kind of came up with this hypothesis that perhaps my Julia Palado and this Dominique Palado, who was an ancestor of all of these DNA cousins, perhaps they could have been siblings. But obviously I'd need to keep looking, keep researching, try to find any documentation that either proved or disproved this theory. So it was time for another breakthrough. Of course, this didn't happen right away. This was over a span of months and months where I had been looking for any indication that Julia and Dominique Palado were brother and sister. I was very fortunate, once again. thanks to the local historian from Northern Ontario who I'd mentioned earlier. During this time, she'd also been continuing to research this particular family line, and she had come across two documents. One you can see up on the screen there, and these records pertained to Dominique Palado, and in these records, it describes him as being the brother of my Julia Palado. So there we had it. The theory was correct. They were, in fact, siblings. The document that you see in front of you there also mentions that Dominique Palado's brother-in-law was the Indian agent named John William Keating. So there we go. It was verified. So I felt confident between the documentation showing the sibling relationship between Julia Palado and Dominique Palado, as well as the fact that myself, my mother, and my great uncle, we all matched several DNA cousins who were descendants of Dominique. I felt very confident at this point that this was my family. This, of course, led to additional family research, and looking more into Dominique Palado helped me kind of flesh out the family tree even more. There are some records, a collection of records that describe Dominique Palado's father as being a man by the name of Louis Palado and his mother as a woman named Ngana Bonakwe. Both of his parents were members of the Thessalon First Nation, and they are both recorded as living in both Bruce Mines and on St. Joseph Island. So because my research had already confirmed that Dominique and Julia Palado were siblings, I'm hopeful that this means that both Ngana Bonakwe and Louis Palado are her parents, both of her parents as well. I was able to discover two baptismal records for John and Julia's children, and they describe Julia Palado as being from St. Joseph Island. So that points to her connection to that one particular home base that Louis Palado and Ngana Bonakwe are recorded as living in. But when it comes to their other home location of Bruce Mines, I discovered something fascinating, another interesting family connection to Bruce Mines as well. And that's because Julia's husband, so the Indian agent John William Keating, he became one of the founders of the town of Bruce Mines in the year 1847 because he and another gentleman established the very first copper mine in Canada there. So as you can see, it's hard to read the paperwork on the slide there, but it does list John Keating, and this is the act to incorporate the Huron and St. Mary's Copper Company in 1847 in the town of Bruce Mines. So while I was continuing to research the history of Bruce Mines, I noticed something very interesting. There happens to be a very small heart-shaped island by the name of Palado Island that is located not very far from Bruce Mines. So that just additionally gave me some confidence that my family has a very deep history connected to these northern shores of Lake Huron. Now, while I haven't had the chance to personally visit these locations yet, it is on my bucket list. So I would love to travel to these various locations and not only discover more about the Anishinaabe culture, but also do some additional research and hopefully make some new discoveries. So that is something I'm hoping to get to one day soon. But there's still the question about this family legend, the story I had been told growing up. So even though I had discovered who my fourth great grandmother was, a bit more about where she came from and who her family was, I still didn't know whether the story about John Keating drowning and Julia saving him was true. So I have to say thanks to Cindy because she really helped point me in the right direction. And we stumbled upon an entry in the book When Chatham Was Woods by John Rhodes. So there we find a testimony from John McKay for the Chatham Daily Planet. It's up on the slide there, but it could be a bit hard to read. So I'm just going to read a portion of the highlighted section there. It says, Captain Keating, who lived up the river, had an Indian wife. The captain and another man, while paddling down a rapid in the north country, had an upset. An Indian girl saw the canoe overturn and, swimming out, rescued the captain. Captain Keating married the Indian girl who had saved his life. So that just sort of backed up this whole family legend that I had heard for so long. So whether or not this tale has been embellished, I don't really know. But either way, I am proud of it, and I do think it makes for a great story. So I'm happy to at least see another source confirming what I had been told as a child. I'm so happy to have discovered so much more about this woman in the photograph that was hanging in my grandmother's home. It's really helped me to feel more connected than ever to my First Nations heritage. And as I mentioned earlier, it has given me some new goals to try to connect with the culture a bit more, and also to do some more family research, hopefully in person at these various locations in Northern Ontario. So even though I do have a deep connection to these places, once again, the fact that my ancestors did end up living in Chatham also gives me an added reason to still consider it my home.
That was really, really good, Rachel.
Thank you very much.
You did a great job. Just the amount of work and the time, like as genealogists, we can all appreciate when you were saying, you know, you had to go there and you went page by page by page by page. Like it's just so time consuming. And the fact that you were able to track down William and Julia's children, because he was like stationed all over the place. So tracking them down, you know, that was amazing. And your tip on Google searches, that's one of the things that we always tell people: Google it, Google it, Google everything, right? And so Google is one of your best friends. But yeah, that was really, really good. And your other tip of how you found some information, but there was not really a tree there, so you spent the time to build that tree basically for that other researcher, hoping that eventually it would connect up to your tree, right? So quite often we encourage people to do that, and it's almost foreign to them. It's like, well, that's not my family, why would I do that? But
right,
you know,
yeah.
that you're surprised that, you know, what you will find. So I don't know, Kim, is there, or sorry, Fran, are there any questions right now?
Yeah, there was. The first one was, why was John referred to as captain?
That's a great question. We still don't 100% know where the captain title came from, but we do have some clues. We've been looking into where John William Keating was from, and a possible connection to a commander at St. Joseph Island named James Keating. So he was referred to as Captain Keating in the records everywhere. So we have a new hypothesis that I'm trying to crack the case on, thinking that maybe there could be like a father-son connection there or some other connection, and that's how this whole Captain Keating title was passed down. It's hard to say, but that's my next case to crack for sure.
All right, there's some comments. As I am too interested in Indigenous ancestors, would like Rachel to tell me the names of her professional researcher.
Oh, yes. So I worked with Ann Anderson. She's got a great website. I believe it's nativefamilytrees.org, I think. She's very knowledgeable. And also Adele Loosemore up north. She's great as well. you know, be able to give you a lot more information. She's kind of more concentrated in Northern Ontario, but she really knows her stuff, and she gave me a lot of tips too on where to look. So she was a real guide at the beginning for sure.
All right, the next one is that was very interesting and so well presented. Thank you.
Thank you.
And the next one is, how did the photograph end up with your grandmother? Did you know what did you know what the trail was? Oh, I'm not making very much sense.
That's okay. I think I get, so how it was passed down through the family to get to me. So from what I understand, my great grandfather had the original in his house, and he actually had copies made of it and gave a copy to each of his children. So as far as I know, everyone had one, and that's kind of, you know, where it got into my grandmother's home. I believe it was my great grandfather's mother who had it originally, and it would have been her mom in the photograph. So I believe that's how it kind of trickled through the generations. It had been my grandmother's house as long as I could remember, so it was always very treasured through each generation.
All right. It just says I missed the second researcher.
Oh, Adele Loosemore is her name. And I don't know if she has a website or not, but she's based out of Killarney. So you might be able to Google that. Hopefully that'll come up.
And Kim put the link in for Anne's website into the chat box for everybody.
Oh, perfect. There we go. That'll make it easy.
Mm-hmm. I actually know Anne as well and have had conversations with her, and she's very knowledgeable.
She is. She sure knows her stuff. I call her a walking encyclopedia.
Yeah, she's wonderful.
Cindy, did you want me to give them the website?
It's actually in the chat box.
Oh, all right. All right, that's fine.
So hopefully everybody can see it.
Yeah, that was all the questions that I've got anyway.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much, everyone.
That's good. I liked your point too about the almost double checking or the references which verified your information, the importance of the time frame and location. So if those things line up, your use of maps is wonderful. I think that's a great way to track everybody. And I'm a visual person, so being able to, you know, see on the map that it was here, and then, oh, look, that's over there. So that is within distance. And, oh, look, it's right beside, as you said, the small island. That makes sense. And it's just, so it's almost putting geography together with history, with genealogy in a big ball, and it all, you know, works together. So that was a really, really good point as well. And a good use of your, use of your detective work.
So,
thanks very much.
Rachel, I have another one here.
Okay, perfect.
How did you learn anything about your fourth great grandmother's lifestyle, or maybe it was her family's lifestyle?
Well, interestingly, I actually connected with one of the DNA descendants, the cousin matches that I was talking about, and they actually still live within the culture. They were raised in the culture, so they're part of the Thessalon First Nation. And so I connected with them yesterday, and they were able to kind of give me a little bit of information, just what the culture was like and things that they had heard, stories they'd heard passed down in their family, which I found really, really interesting. So I'm going to have to pick their brain a bit more to find out. I feel like I'm just kind of on the cusp of learning so much. It seems like it's limitless. But I found that really interesting to hear I guess a distant relative talk about what their upbringing was like, what their parents' upbringing was like. And it just kind of gave me some clues about what my family history was probably like at that time.
That's great. So yeah, it sounds like you have a few road trips scheduled
Yes, that's
in the future?
hopefully soon. That's my goal. I'd really love to get up there at some point and really dig around and mess around and see what I can find up there.
Right.
All right, what was the fantastic connection to your Korean relatives?
Sorry, can you say that again?
What a fantastic connection to your, all right, I'm not good at pronunciating things.
That's okay.
Some relatives anyway, your relatives?
Okay.
Essaion.
Sorry, Bissai.
Thessaion. Relatives.
Destin?
Was that the reference to the Thessalon First Nation?
Maybe that was what it was, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the I guess the reserve, the band that my family was from. So it was really nice to be able to pinpoint that, because that was always a big question mark. And they were pretty mobile along the north shores of Lake Huron. So there were records popping up everywhere, but it was really nice to find kind of a home base to see where they raised their children, and were actually recorded in things like pay lists and things like that. Mm-hmm. So that was a pretty cool day when I discovered that. I was really happy.
Yeah. So are there any more questions, Fran?
Nope, not coming up yet.
That sounds great. Well, I know that you said that your presentation wasn't, overly long, which I think was, it was just perfect. It allows time for some questions and for some chatting. So is there anything else you'd like to share with us?
I guess if there was anything I'd like to share, the biggest thing that I learned, because I went into this with this story already in my mind, I found that at the beginning, I was really looking for anything that would prove the narrative that I already had in my head. And I learned after a while that you're looking for not only what proves what you believe, but what can also disprove it. So there were things that I found that, changed what I believed. Or where I was headed, I guess, in my research, and threw up a little roadblock here and there. But it was a really good education for me, just to really be open-minded and to not be so narrow in what it was I was looking for, to just try to support what I felt was right at the beginning.
Right. And I think you bring up a good point too about your narrative, and just referring back to where we found that little tiny piece of reference to Captain Keating was in a history book that is in the collection, not a genealogy book at all. So that just goes to show the importance of, the local museums and libraries and, groups and societies, because they're the ones that are holding those books, those papers. And you might not be thinking they're genealogical in context, but they are historical, and quite often there's little bits and pieces of what was happening in the day that would have affected your ancestor. So thinking out of the box as well, and not just being so focused on genealogy and, the resources online and, strictly genealogical resources, but, visiting those places when you go to visit your where your ancestors are from, chances are there's stuff in their libraries, there's stuff in their archives.
Yeah.
So it's important to keep that in mind too. Like we mentioned earlier, geography and history go along with family history. So it's
right. And keep everything. That's one thing too. Like you might find something and you think, oh, I don't think this has anything to do with what I'm looking for, but keep it anyways, because you might surprise yourself. I've found that has happened a few times too, where I've got a little tidy pile of something that I don't touch for months, but then I come back to it and I look and I find little clues in there that I didn't pick up the first time, or maybe I've learned something new and it all comes together. So if you think it might have something to do with it, just keep it. That's my advice anyway.
Well, that's why I think genealogists are also kind of orders.
Right, right. We can't help it.
Can't throw out anything, and we don't want anybody else to throw out anything either. So
It's true.
Rachel, what history book was it?
It was When Chatham Was Woods by John Rhodes, and there is some fascinating stuff in there. I read the whole thing. I didn't just look at what I needed for my own family tree. The stories in that book were incredible. So I'd recommend it to anyone who's interested in that to give it a read.
Yeah, we actually have quite a collection of early Kent County history books in our, Romantic Kent and Chatham Was Woods. There's a variety of historical books, which, as I'm sure every location has as well, about the beginnings of their their communities and who was involved and how it all started. So yeah, they're very, very important. In John Rhodes' books, we have almost all his books. He's a wonderful historian. So
yeah, pretty incredible collection, that's for sure.
Yeah, he's a great guy. Very, very knowledgeable. Need to have some of those historians around to help us genealogists along the way.
That's right. We need all the help we can get.
Yeah. Okay. Is there anything else anybody would like to chime in or ask a question about?
Oops. Yep, I have another message.
Okay.
There is name indexes connected to, is there a name index connected to When Chatham Was Woods? Is there an index?
Yeah, so that's one of the, like I said, that's one of the resources in our library. So they have been, a lot of our materials have been indexed. And then those materials have been transferred into what we call on our website, the master index. So that's open for anybody. Like everybody can just get off this meeting and pop over to our website and go check out the master index. So if your person's name, find your person. So Captain John Keating showed up and it made a reference to that particular book, saying that we have this in our library. Your person is in this book, mentioned in that book. And then Rachel just shot us an email and just said, hey, I found this in your master index. I'm like, what is it? Like, can you look that up for me? And that's exactly what we, are here for, to help everybody. And was what the master index is hoping to do, is to point people, at where the resources are. And we're always adding to it. So monthly, Colleen LeBay is our technical person, and we have volunteers in the background indexing things. So you will go today, but then you'll go back 3 weeks from now, and there'll be another, 5,000 names in there in different resources. So we're trying to, keep adding to it and building it. So check back often.
Yeah, it's pretty invaluable, I think. Made a big difference for me.
Yeah, and it's a lot of work. So that's where, as we were mentioning about the transcribing project, like we definitely need people helping. And with technology, people can do it at home now. So you don't have to be going up to the library to pull out a book to sit at the table and transcribe it, right? Or to index it. So technology, love it, hate it. It's
right.
But, on things like this, it's definitely going to be a big help to get the information out there to other people. So it's a great resource, I think. So, and Colleen is actually on. So big kudos to Colleen, our web person, for taking care of all our tech needs. So
yeah, that'd be a big job.
Oh yes. Anything else, Fran?
No, I don't see anything else.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Rachel. Maybe one of your road trips can be to come on down to Chatham and meet us.
Sounds good.
It's not a big road trip. Good. Yeah, we're only an hour and a half or so away, so it wouldn't be a huge deal for you to come on down, I don't think.
Nope, that'd be like coming home.
Yeah, you can visit while you're here. So as I said, thank you so much for you agreeing basically when I asked you if you would share a little bit of your information and your story. So it's wonderful you did that. We truly appreciate it. And it was nice because you gave some people some different places they could look and some other connections and ideas and things to do. So thank you so much. We greatly appreciate it. It was wonderful.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, then everybody, we're actually done a few minutes early. Well, that's nice. So you can go enjoy your Friday night of this long Thanksgiving Canadian holiday. So thank you very much, everybody. And we will see you next month in November. Please join us again for the next educational presentation. Thank you, everybody. Good night.